volunteers. The good news no, let's start with the bad news. This is the only sentence I will speak in Spanish. The good news are, I'm also not an English native speaker, therefore I will speak slowly, and I hope that you can follow, and I will make the work for our wonderful interpreters a bit easier. First of all, thank you for the kind invitation to here. I want to thank Onam to give me the floor here, and I'm strongly aware of the reputation of Onam, not only here in Mexico and not only in the Latin American region, but also in the world. And therefore, I'm feeling really honored to have the chance to speak here on this stage and sharing my thoughts. I'm really happy that this conference here in the library has a strong focus on the social role of libraries, and especially this session, and about the mission of libraries, and how the people of our institutions and we represent and can help deliver change from the local to the global level. This is all about what the SDGs are, and I have to say IFLA has worked a lot in the establishment of the integration of the SDGs to bring access to information to the center of the SDGs. I guess we all here in this room have done a lot of work, what can be done to deliver special goals, education, health, food security, for example. But what about cross-cutting elements? Factors which enable society to work better, to do more. How can libraries help there? This is a question which I want to tackle today. I wanted to set out the argument that libraries, both by providing access to information and through other services, form a key part of the infrastructure that makes society function, that makes them successful from the local to the global level, how they can be bonds and bridges and so pillars. And in parallel, I want to talk about how can we, as IFLA, provide the infrastructure that helps the library field itself to function also here in Mexico. How can we build bonds and bridges and so be a central pillar of the library field we are looking to build? And what does this mean about the way we think, the way we work? There has been a lot of talk about the role of libraries as social infrastructure recently, especially north of the border from here in the United States of America. And I want to refer to Eric Kleinenberg. You see him here, an American sociologist who has been at the heart of this with his book, Places for the People. And I can really encourage you to read this book. In it, he interviews people living around New York about their experiences, their influences. People from all walks of life in situations, from tough neighborhoods and better ones, parents, families, and those living alone. He also looks at whole neighborhoods, often ones that are forgotten, far away from the skyscrapers and the lights of Manhattan, the forgotten societies. In this, he is looking for a common thread. What is it that gives people stronger sense of community, of trust, that allows them to keep going? The word infrastructure here is worth spending some time on it. Normally, when we talk about infrastructure, of course, it's things like roads, railways, ports, airports, pipelines, and cables. The physical construction that allows people, but also things, electricity, and information to flow around countries and between them. Clearly, they cost a lot. Governments invest billions in them. If they don't do, they are often punished at the polls. But they get something important in return. by providing structure, physical infrastructure allows a country to work. Politically, though allowing governments to control all parts of the territory by enabling people to move easily around and create a sense of statehood. But also economically, infrastructure is what allows us to build economies over wide spaces, to specialize, to become more efficient, more effective. It is not by accident that the development of canals, then railways, then roads, then cables have powered each development, let's say each revolution. The internet itself is arguably a giant infrastructure project designed for resilience and reach. So what about social infrastructure? To take Eric Kleinenberg's words, social infrastructure provides the setting and context for social participation. In other words, it's social infrastructure that makes it possible for societies to function just as physical infrastructure makes it possible for political units and economies to function. It does this by providing the spaces and reference points needed for the development of social capital. Social capital, another term worth exploring. One that has been in use for over a century when it was deliberately conceived of as a parallel to economic capital, money, and human capital, skills. Different definition focused on different aspects of this. An early definition focused on goodwill, fellowship, sympathy, and social intercourse among the individuals and families who make up a social unit. This leaves open the question of what a social unit is. A family, a clan, a city, a country, in a single place or spread over distance. There is clearly a risk, also not an inevitable, of social capital creating insiders and outsiders. In trying to understand how social capital works, academics talk of bonds and bridges. Bonds are what tie people together within a group. For example, within families, between members of single ethnic, political or economic group. Bridges are what makes it possible to reach out beyond and engage others. There are also definitions that highlight more the impact of social capital, easier communication, and greater level of trust, for example, which bring further positive benefits. Being confident that you can trust someone to do what they say they are going to do, though they aren't going to cheat. Social capital is therefore a route to and an enabler of other positive outcomes. Peaceful communications, honest trading, collaboration for innovation. Collective projects that do not work when there is no faith in the goodwill or reliability of others. Of course, this connection, this efficiency isn't always used in the best possible place. This sort of social capital, arguable, is what makes mafia families or your drug companies so effective, for example. It has also been blamed for the perpetuation of elites through networks of former students to the exclusion of others. This is where the size and the boundaries of the social network come into play. Social capital can work to the disadvantage of those who are not included, creating insiders and outsiders. Exactly what we have heard in the first session when we spoke about open access. Can, but not will, because this does not need to be inevitable. As I mentioned earlier, as important as the bonds within a group are the bridges between groups. Finally, other definitions look to include what allows this connection to exist. The OECD, for example, talks about the importance of shared norms and values, common references, shared expectations, an unspoken understanding of what is acceptable or not allows for higher levels of trust. Values such as respect for the safety and the security of people, as well as perhaps more subjective ones, such as regards for certain symbols, stories, and qualities. Kleinenberg himself suggests that one key thing allowing social capital to develop is social infrastructure, the setting and the context for network building. Indeed, these two definitions are not exclusive. Social infrastructure, by providing reference points and space for interactions, helps social capital to develop. The interaction made possible through social infrastructure and the reference points that given, this is an anchor, can help define or redefine these norms and values. So summarize, so far, we have the idea of social infrastructure as a framework for building social capital, just as physical infrastructure allows for the development of economic capital. This capital comes in the shape of networks made up full of connections enabled by common references supported through shared spaces. It is what allows us to work effectively as groups, as communities, as societies, and so achieve more together than we can on our own, both in the good times and the bad. In the good times, of course, it's what lets us undertake new projects, new initiatives, running an institution as large as this would not be possible without it. But also in bad times, it's about resilience, about dealing with situations which can be difficult and stressful, about having the connections and sense of community to help each other, to rebuild physically, to reconstruct emotionally. A situation that arrives all too often due to the economic and social uphill, to the violence and conflict, and to the results of climate change. And here we are at the SDGs. Our need for social capital and the infrastructure that helps create and sustain, therefore, is as strong as ever. So, why this long introduction? Because I want to speak about libraries, where libraries comes into this. Of course, returning to Eric Klingenberg, libraries are just such an example of social infrastructure. In his interviews, he underlines that libraries have proven their power as a place not only where people can interact with culture, with heritage, with ideas, but also where children can socialize safely, where parents can engage in programs, where anyone can work with a librarian who will give them new opportunities. They are a meeting place within communities, not just local communities, also university communities, school communities, often the only one that is non-commercial, open to all people, open to all possibilities. They help develop not only the bonds that keep smaller groups together, but also provides bridges, the opportunity to engage with a wider community in a safe, trusted place. They can help deliver on the positives of social capitals, the sense of familiarity, of trust, of shared thinking, and avoid the negatives, the exclusion, the risk of inequality, the elitism. This gives them, the libraries, a unique potential. Despite this, Klingenberg notes that libraries remain underappreciated, undervalued as parts of our social infrastructure. They are too often portrayed as a luxury compared to a police station, schools, or hospitals. But at the same time, they do not have the same glamour or status value as a theatre or a museum. As such, they too often, in too many parts of the world, face the threat of cuts or closure. Indeed, efforts to understand the value of libraries to society have arguably fallen behind efforts to understand the contributions of museums or heritage sites. It is only in recent years, and I'm proud to say that IFLA is playing its part in this, that we are beginning to gather stories and evidence about libraries. We cannot claim that libraries are the only institution that counts in the social infrastructure of any country or society, but we need to show that this infrastructure is made stronger, more complete, more effective when there are properly supported libraries at its heart. One key reason for why this can seem difficult is the fact that libraries help so many people in so many ways that simply getting a clear idea of the overall impact itself becomes a giant task. This sounds absurd, but this is really the challenge for libraries. I want to underline. It's really so that we help so many people in so many ways that simply getting a clear idea of the overall impact itself becomes a giant task, and this is your task for the future. Indeed, there is a strong argument to be made that the social infrastructure is not the only infrastructure of which libraries are part. Let's mention the physical infrastructure that allows connectivity to the internet, with libraries acting as nodes, as repeaters, as terminals. But it's also fair to say that they are part of the education infrastructure. Throughout life, libraries support learning, from preschool reading classes that help children get ready for school in the first place, to the school and public libraries that complement the work of teachers by providing materials and information literacy, to the spaces for independent learning that libraries such as those here at ONAM offer. And finally, to the venues and gateways that public and community libraries offer to lifelong learning for those who have left the education system. This is not to claim that libraries are the only institutions involved in education, but it is to say that a country's chances of meeting its education goals are significantly weaker without libraries. I can say the same of the roles of libraries in the research infrastructure. Libraries are of course storehouses of information, of knowledge, the basis for further research. Access to a wide collection helps researchers target their efforts better and focus on what is still unknown, what is still needed. Libraries are also playing an increasingly active role in dissemination and promotion of work, helping to ensure its impact. In more and more cases, they are also managing data and finding new ways to allow research to be carried out on the works in their collections. Again, this is not to say that research is only about libraries, but it is to say that libraries, that we are once again a key pillar. And of course, libraries are part of the cultural infrastructure, not just for the written word, but increasingly for a whole variety of forms of creativity. From developing a love of books in use to providing a means of discovering new voices later in life. From a place where writers themselves can carry out research to a venue where they can do readings and meet fans. From quiet spaces to maker spaces. Libraries are once again not the only, but certainly a key pillar of the cultural infrastructure of any society. In each of these areas, the power of libraries to inspire, to engage, to enable, and to connect is clear. It's a unique quality of libraries, as a space not only to access and engage with information for learning, for research, for enjoyment, for a sense of place and belonging, but also a space for meeting, for learning together, thinking together, creating together. So how to do this most effectively? So far I've been focused on how libraries interact with individuals, with communities, how the services and spaces they provide build social capital. But in order to do this more effectively and build the case for governments and other funders to support it, we need to go one step further. We should not believe that libraries can achieve much on their own. The key decision maker about laws, about budget, are not going to be influenced by a single voice. And the challenge we have of making the world of information that now exists accessible, understandable for all, is not one we can face when we are scattered, when we are uncoordinated, when we are unaligned. Here too we need to think about bonds and bridges, but this time between ourselves and with the wider world. In short, to build social capital in communities, libraries need to develop their own social capital. Of course, a key part of this is the links that connect within institutions, within countries, across borders. Associations play an essential role in this, building strong and united library fields at the national level. Strong and united because of a sense of shared priorities, shared values, and shared norms. And in turn, there's of course IFLA globally, the global organization for libraries offering so many opportunities to cooperate with colleagues around the world. Within areas of interest, within library types, within regions, but also across them, in order to build new ideas, new collaborations, new services. Our work on the IFLA strategy also aimed in the direction of building this sort of social capital, these networks, this unity within our field. And I will talk more about it. But what can these networks achieve? There are plenty of examples already. The cooperation between this university and public libraries in the region to provide internet access. The preservation networks that help smaller institutions ensure that their collections are not lost because they do not have the means or the justification to buy all the necessary equipment themselves. The connections between university and school libraries in order to help pupils make the shift towards more autonomous research and study. Advocate for the importance of access to information and the contribution of our institutions as a driver of development. This really has to be a group effort, both in terms of providing the evidence, the arguments, but also in coordinating efforts to reach out to politicians to show them most effectively the power of libraries. And of course, there are the great projects around open access and open science that demonstrate that by working together, it is possible to do more with more information than ever before. This point is also a significant one, and one I know that you will be discussing this in much more depth in the rest of the session. The rise of open access has been a major achievement of the past 20 years. One that has, to a large extent, relied both on the physical infrastructure of libraries, not least repositories, and on the readiness of those involved in promoting wider access to scholarly communications to work together. It is a great example of the impact of networking, of partnership, of trust, of a focus on providing public goods that enable progress elsewhere. A reinforcement, a turbocharging of the collaboration that already exists between libraries in the shape of document supply or interlibrary loan. This alongside the change in mindset, the transformation from gatekeeper to gateway to gate opener that I will talk tomorrow. It's a great example of social capital at work. It is also arguable brought libraries into more contact with others. First of all, within the research field as work outside of the academic world. Special libraries, for example, in governments, in parliaments, in institutions can have a particularly strong role here, helping to ensure that the result of open science do not just end up lost in the internet, but can actually feed into change. There are also more and more examples of public libraries getting involved, not just in order to facilitate access to research materials for people not affiliated to an institution, but also to stimulate interest in citizen science, which becomes more and more important. These are not the traditional contexts that university libraries, that research libraries would be making. It's a step beyond, but also a step forwards. Because in doing so, they are helping to make sure that open access realizes its potential to support better decision making and so development. So once again, we have bonds and bridges among a particular type of library, but also between library types, all in order to deliver better results. How can we accelerate this further? How can you use the IFLA strategy in particular in order to build networks between libraries across borders? How can it serve to build bridges to other institutions, other sectors, other interests? How can it encourage the instinct to cooperate, the sense of openness we need for this? And in doing so, how can it help us, help the people deserve to do the same? Crucial questions. Our strategy is the result of a conscious effort to promote social capital in the library field, to improve the way that IFLA as its infrastructure works. A transformation. We are working to promote a new, more inclusive, more collaborative, more responsive way of working with our members, with our members' members, with the library field as a whole, with you. This was what gave us the global vision, the biggest, broadest conversation ever held in the library field, in any similar field, with a global convening, 6 regional meetings, and hundreds of meetings at the national level, and of our professional units, over 30,000 people involved from 190 countries, with between them over 500,000 years of library experience, an incomparable and unprecedented response. 30,000 people sharing their views about the strengths of the library field and its priorities. So your priorities for the future. Crucially, by voting, by contributing, we created a network of people within shared references, with shared values, with a shared interest in strengthening our field. This response allowed us to develop 10 highlights and 10 opportunities, pairs which celebrate where we are strong and how we could go further. This opened the way to a second phase, to go from vision to ideas for actions, because a vision without actions is hallucination. And we have seen so many visions which are in a drawer, and they are inactive and useless. And actually, this we wanted to avoid at IFLA. Therefore, a further global workshop and 6 regional editions, hundreds more conversations and discussions, and 8,500 ideas we created, not just for us at IFLA headquarters, but for the library field as a whole. I'm proud to say that many of these are already available through the Ideas Tools. So took a look at the IFLA website. But as I said, these ideas did help us make the next key step in the process, from vision to strategy to action. And here we are. They were the foundation, the raw material for developing a new strategy, a new type of strategy for the field, for our field. One that not only fully represented the great work taking place not just at our headquarters in Den Haag in the Netherlands, but also in our professional units, the biggest brains trust in the library field. There are more than 1,000 experts working for the global library field, making standards, guidelines, which are necessary, especially in a connected global library world, that we can communicate with each other. Without IFLA's brain's trust, that would not be possible. And that would give new coherence, new direction, new drive of our work, but also a strategy that could act as a reference point for the library field as a whole. Because just as the inputs of the entire library field, also input from here, from Mexico, created the global vision, the guiding star for our work on the strategy. Now we hope that the strategy can help you also here in your country. At the level of associations, at the level of institutions, and also at the level of individuals. A document that should not only stimulate thinking about how we can all do better for libraries and the people that use them, but one that helps us do better together by giving us a framework that makes it possible to identify opportunities for cooperation, for coordination, for synergies, building a new community of libraries worldwide where you can be part of it. And so, as we define how we will work at IFLA headquarters to support our members, we will be calling on you, our members, the people at the heart of our work, to identify actions you are taking which align with the strategic directions, the key initiatives of the IFLA strategy. We want to keep the conversation going. We have achieved so much with the vision process. We have created a movement. We cannot lose this momentum. We cannot let this network we have created disappear. We need to keep active, to keep coming up with and exchanging ideas. I'm sure you won't struggle in this. There's so much good work already going on in the world. There's so much good work going on here in Mexico. And this work deserves to be shared, needs to be shared. Because a stronger library field means stronger societies around the world. So I want to repeat the invitation that I made in my opening words. IFLA is open. IFLA is ready to provide the space, the support for the actions that will ensure that libraries continues to play an essential role, a growing role in the communities that they serve. That they can be pillars of successful societies, social infrastructure. That they truly are gate openers, catalysts, source of opportunities and of the tools to realize them. And through our new strategy, we have a framework, a basis for thinking through aligned actions to achieve this. And I will have the pleasure to talk more about this tomorrow. But already I want to ask you to join us in this, become part of this movement, join us. It's really to the help of the people in your country. And I'm really sure only we work together, we will succeed. If we go the way that we're going along, we will not succeed, we will not overcome the challenges of the future. This is the only way to success. Let's do it together. Thank you so much.